Hi everyone, we're going to get started in just a minute or two. We're just waiting as people kind of get logged in, but I see participants streaming in now, which is exciting, and we'll be chatting with you just in a minute. So as we get people ready to go, just wanted to ask people to comment in the chat box. You can see if you can hear us okay. So as we just kind of, as we're getting set up, you'll note there's a chat box and there's also a Q&A box. So we're going to kind of use them for separate purposes because we've got them both. So chat to confirm. Thank you for people who are saying that sound is good. I appreciate that. And we'll use the Q&A box for specific questions for Jeanne as we get through the presentation. So I think we're at 5:02, so we might as well get rolling. And if people continue to join, that's even better. Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to the season kickoff of Uncorked. My name is Danielle Graff. I am the current chair of the WESK board, and I am your guest host for today. And I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Jeanne Martinson, who was the original chair of what was Women Entrepreneurs, and is, of course, a very active and busy entrepreneur. So she's got lots to share with us today. So just a quick short bio on Jeanne. Jeanne Martinson is a best-selling Canadian author and speaker on workplace diversity. She has presented her research on gender, racism, and the generational divide in workshops and conference keynotes from Buenos Aires, Argentina, to Hamburg, Germany. After authoring a dozen books, Jeanne began Wood Dragon Books, an indie hybrid press focused on publishing nonfiction books and genre fiction. Jeanne was the president of the board of directors of Women Entrepreneurs, now WESK, when it opened its doors in Saskatoon and Regina. Her ongoing work in gender issues has been acknowledged with the YWCA Women of Distinction Award, the Centennial Leadership Award for Outstanding Contribution to the Province of Saskatchewan, and the Athena Award. Jeanne's diversity work can be found at martrain.org and her publishing firm at wooddragonbooks.com. Okay, so just so everybody knows, Uncorked will be recorded and will be available for viewing on the WESK Facebook page. And so, yeah, just a few kind of introductory notes. So as I kind of alluded to earlier, for kind of some general feedback, and if we ask you some questions, we're going to use the chat box on your screen. And if you have any questions that we want to save for Jeanne kind of as she's talking through or kind of at the end, and I'll try and manage those and bring them up on a timely basis, feel free to use that Q&A box. So before we begin, we have a few words from Dr. Gina Grandy, Dean of the Hill Levine Schools of Business and our presenting sponsor for Uncorked.
Welcome everyone to Women Entrepreneurs of Saskatchewan, Uncorked. Uncorked brings together a diverse range of local entrepreneurs, business professionals, and community leaders to inspire through storytelling and casual conversations. It is a wonderful opportunity to hear from and about fascinating women leaders in our community. My name is Gina Grandy, and I am the Dean of the Hill and Levine Schools of Business at the University of Regina. And Hill and Levine is once again proud to be a sponsor of Uncorked. Today, I have the privilege of introducing a remarkably interesting woman leader with a deep commitment to advancing workplace diversity. Jeanne Martinson is a best-selling Canadian author and a diversity strategist. She has co-authored more than a dozen books and has presented to audiences across the world. Jeanne was also the first president of the board of directors of WESK, what was then called Women Entrepreneurs. She has been celebrated and recognized in our community for her work on advancing gender considerations and has been the recipient of the YWCA Women of Distinction Award, the Centennial Leadership Award for Outstanding Contribution to the Province of Saskatchewan, and the Athena Award. You can find more about Jeanne at martrain.org and wooddragonbooks.com. Jeanne, I know I'm looking forward to hearing more about your story and how you will challenge each of us to positively advance workplace diversity in our organizations. Welcome, Jeannie, and thank you and everyone for joining us today.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Grandy, for that note, and my apologies that I kind of stole the thunder on the intro, but I don't think it's necessarily a negative thing to recognize some of Jeannie's accomplishments, because there are many and very, very interesting. So a couple other quick housekeeping notes before we get started. Just want to recognize our sponsors. The presenting sponsor is the Hill Levine School of Business. And our wine sponsor for Uncorked, whenever we get back to doing it in person and to raising a glass together, is WESK Group. Also just want to recognize a couple of upcoming WESK events that I hope you all have in your calendars. The first one is WESK's virtual small business conference. So this is celebrating 25 years. And so we invite everyone to join WESK for its first ever virtual small business conference presented by Connexus Credit Union. So this will be happening from September 28th to October 2nd, and WESK will be hosting a variety of virtual events throughout the week to celebrate the 25 years. So a bunch of different topics and fascinating panelists, so I really do hope you can join. And there are about 100 free tickets available for each session, but they are getting claimed fast. So please do make sure you check out the WESK website to get yourself a seat reserved for each of those sessions that are topical to you. And I also hope you can all mark your calendars for our next Uncorked session, which will be Tuesday, October 20th. And that will be featuring Sandra Masters, who is the manager of Credit Western Canada for Richardson Pioneer Limited and the chair of the board of directors of the Regina Exhibition Association. So another great speaker coming up soon. So please make sure you mark October 20th in your calendar. Okay, so all of my scripts done. I just want to say again, welcome everybody. Thanks so much for joining. And for those of you who are at home or somewhere where wine was available, please raise your glass and join us in getting uncorked. Okay, so Jeannie, now I'm going to basically not talk anymore, and it's all over to you. But
I notice in the chat that Ashley is here from Virtus Group. So Ashley, this is for you.
Wonderful. Okay, so we've allotted some time to kind of talk about two pieces for this session today. So we described it as 25 years of WESK and then all about Jeannie. So of equal importance, but let's start with 25 years of WESK. So Jeannie, please tell us a little bit about the driving forces behind the creation of what is now WESK and what its original mandate was.
Well, I think what was happening at the time politically is the federal government was really recognizing that women-owned businesses were starting at a quicker rate than male-owned businesses. And secondly, they were staying in business longer. And that combination, I think, kind of pushed them to decide to put some energy and money behind increasing the number of women-owned businesses and supporting women-owned businesses. And so that was just the political climate at the time. And so they put together focus groups across the country. Western Diversification was responsible for the 4 Western provinces. And so they brought together a group of women in Saskatchewan to decide what was going to be the model. Every province had their own model. So for example, in Manitoba, there was already a strong women entrepreneur membership group. So they joint ventured with them. So when we were looking at it originally as 12 women in a room, I think we were at the Willows Golf Course in Saskatoon, chewing this up as to, is the need really here? What should we do? What should be our services? What should be our structure? We looked at 2 groups, business and professional women. At that time, they had a chapter in Regina, Moose Jaw, Prince Albert, and Saskatoon. And Saskatoon and Regina Women's Network. Looking at those groups and did we want to joint venture with them? Was their mandate such that that would make sense? And what we decided out of that was instead to create a membership, an associate and a full membership that was part of Women Entrepreneurs. And part of that reasoning is we looked at what could we do if we got federal government money, and what would we do if we lost that money? Because there was no guarantee from year to year whether that money would still be there from the federal government. And originally they gave us money for doing programs and for regular costs as far as running offices, etc., and then brought on a loan fund. And so every year it was kind of, okay, are we going to get the loan fund extra money? Yes, no, how's this all going to work? Until we got into this pattern where there was such obvious evidence that Women Entrepreneurs as an organization was doing what it needed to do and was building the economy, that idea of government funding not being there, kind of that worry disappeared. So that was the kind of the beginning of the little beginning.
So how did you get involved? So you said there was these 12 women in the room. How were you one of the people that was in the room? How did, like, why was it, I guess, how did you, I guess, be part of the group? And then also, you know, why was it important to you to be one of those people in that room?
At the time, I was sitting on the provincial board and the national board for Business and Professional Women, that organization, which is all over the world. There's chapters all over Canada. And I was very involved at the national and provincial level at that time. And so that was why I was basically asked in. Women, Western Diversification, the main player from their side was Valerie Katari. And Valerie also was connected to Saskatoon Women's Network and to Business and Professional Women. So she kind of knew what the different business women at the board level were. And that's who she was really looking at trying to bring in. But of those 12 women, she did a really good job of making sure it just wasn't Saskatoon and Regina. There were several women there from the north, well, semi-north, and women from Estevan and from Swift Current. And so we had kind of the lowest two-thirds of the province covered off really well. And that was the mandate from the beginning, because they already started to see what was happening in Manitoba, where they were basically connected to a Winnipeg-based group, and there wasn't necessarily that same pull-in across the province for commitment or perception that the organization served the whole province, that kind of the perception, oh, it serves Winnipeg. BC had, I think, 7 different satellite offices when they first started. And so it was, you know, everyone had their own little model. And but really the most important thing was the theme that we had identified through our original focus groups, that this was a real problem, is that things were not as easy for women starting businesses. There were absolute barriers, both explicit and implicit. And so I think that anyone who was a woman in business saw, oh, this is an organization that I'm either going to be at least a member, or I'm going to want to be involved at a governance level.
Let's talk a little bit about those barriers. So I know when we talked kind of leading up to this call, you kind of told me a little bit about really the inception of the loan fund, and I thought that was really interesting. So if you could maybe tell everyone a little bit about the context for that.
Well, what we found with our original research was that women who start businesses build their business and grow their business on the slow-mo model. So basically, as I make sales, as I have revenue in my cash flow, I spend that money to build my business. Where men were much more likely to go and get loans and build their businesses faster. And so because of that, they had also, were more likely to have had car loans, were more likely to have, even though they maybe be on the mortgage with their spouse, more likely to be that first signature when it comes to borrowing money for a bunch of different things. So women generally just did not have the credit ratings that men did. And so that was really challenging, because so I'm growing my business, and all of a sudden now I really need $10,000 or $25,000 to make that next big jump. But I don't have any credit rating. All my credit cards are also in my husband's name. I've never had a bank loan. I've always bought my car with cash. All of these reasons why we don't have credit ratings. And so the loan fund was really designed to assist women to build their business to that next step, whether they needed to borrow $1,500 or $15,000, because we had an upper end. At the beginning, I think it was probably 25, then it grew to maybe 75,000, because what we really wanted to do was to be the first loan for that business, so that that entrepreneur, she could pay that loan off and show credit worthiness, and then we worked to help her leverage that money into a more significant loan with a traditional lender. We didn't want to be the women lender. we wanted to be the transition for women to be able to lend with the big banks and the big credit unions. So back to your point, one of the big challenges was that whole concept of lending. There was just a movement starting that we started seeing more women business loans officers. So when you know, that implicit and explicit bias of, well, you know, are you really serious about this business? You know, you do have kids, you know, isn't this something you're just kind of doing on the side? How can we guarantee that our loans are going to be really paid? All of those things that were very real 25 years ago and unfortunately a little bit still real today. But with the number of women who are in the banking system today, that kind of attitude is pretty much stepped on pretty quick.
Well, hopefully. But yeah, no, I think that's certainly the loan fund I can see the importance of, and obviously that definitely bridged a gap that was, you know, a barrier at the time and continues to be something that is, you know, a very valuable service that WESK provides. So maybe tell me a little bit, but from your view, what would you say was kind of the impact of women entrepreneurs in maybe its first 5 years versus overall for 25 years, or kind of what are the highlights for you?
Well, I think one of the challenges is there was very little really good business coaching or business education, and what was out there was really kind of expensive. So it's like, well, I need to really go and learn how to do these spreadsheets and to figure out balances and all this kind of stuff, but I can't afford that course. So I'm going to just try and figure it out on my own. And so one of the big things that women entrepreneurs did for women in business is to bring that learning opportunity and webinars. The conference was a multi-day big learning opportunity, as well as that individual coaching. So I think that concept within 5 or 6 years was the idea, you know, if you need to talk to someone about this part of your business, managing your business, marketing your business, the economics around your business, there were people within women entrepreneurs there were women within women entrepreneurs who could coach you through that. So there was no real reason to be hampered by that lack of knowledge. And one of the challenges, I think, was for women entrepreneurs to balance the feminist paradigm. I remember when we did our first big marketing piece and we went to an advertising agency to do it, and there was it was a picture of a woman in, you know, a skirted suit, that was all okay, and wearing pearls and with really long red nails. And I said, you know what, it's not to say that there aren't women in business who look just like that, but we need to balance that with, as I said, this feminine look, but the taking care of business. That the feminist paradigm of women entrepreneurs was, women have a right to be in business. Women have a right to be treated the same as in business. Women have a right not to have the barriers placed in front of them that men do not. And so that feminist perspective, we were always trying to balance it with the fact that we all were women entrepreneurs, we're both.
Right.
And that was something that you don't struggle with now. Like women in business dress the way they want. If they want to wear a lipstick, they wear lipstick. If they don't want to wear makeup, they don't. We don't have those attitudes that we did 25 years ago that were very, very real about how people within the business world and the banking world particularly judged women as to whether they were serious or not about what they did.
So that's really interesting because, of course, yeah, times have changed, attitudes have changed, and yet WESK is still something that's, I think, very relevant and, you know, extremely helpful in terms of helping a lot of female entrepreneurs and being a supportive member of this whole entrepreneurial ecosystem in the province. So what would you say is kind of, what, in your view, what role should WESK be playing today, or how, and linking back to kind of where things have been to where we are now, you know, how important do you think WESK continues to be?
I think that there's a deeper level of issues in the sense of, as I look at my business background of having had several businesses, having been in business with several partners, I sure wish that I had had a really good 4-hour course on how to partner. Because often we partner in business based on the excitement that other person has for the same idea we do. And we're all excited about how great this business is going to be and what we're going to grow it into, and ta-da, we're so excited. And what happens is that's usually the worst partnership, because you might both have real marketing mindset, or you both might have real the mindset of creating the product or service, or you might have a real management mindset, and so you don't complement each other. And also, when you get caught up in the enthusiasm of entrepreneurship and running your own game, whatever the product or service is, you don't sit down and do the due diligence with that person as far as, okay, what are you going to do? What am I going to do? What's your role? What's my role? How do we deal with conflict? How are we going to deal with resources? How are we going to present ourselves publicly? What is the rules that we're going to have about self-governing? So what do I not want you saying about me or the business in public? All of these things need to be chewed up and discussed. And you don't see those until you have a partner that creates a problem. And so I've seen that over and over and over with businesses run by women, because we get into business with our friends and it's not always a great match. And instead of it being that I'm supporting your business and you're supporting mine, we go into business together, and then we end up losing that friendship because we can't manage the business successfully, or we don't do the due diligence or the training and have the tough conversations to make sure that we're working together. Now, we've moved really forward in the entrepreneurial workspace to partnering. So you might not be partners legally within your organization, but you're partnering with someone else. So all of those same problems exist. So when you're doing a joint venture with someone, you're putting a project together with someone, you need to have those conversations, because at the end of the game, if you have a relationship with this person you want to protect, you're not doing yourself a favor or them a favor by not having those tough conversations first. So I think with women entrepreneurs, the place it's holding that needs to be explored really is that next layer of business, those tough conversations, those more complex organizational structures. And then I think there's also the piece around networking and support, because when you're in your own business, it can be a lonely business. And sometimes we get too caught up in just doing the job and doing the 14 hours a day that we become isolated, and we don't take care of our own mental health and our own support and networking. And so I think that's also a really big element that women entrepreneurs today as an organization can be really instrumental in.
Yeah, so shout out to you ladies, or gentlemen, I didn't look, but to everyone who joined us today, because yeah, that's part of the WESK service offering and part of the benefit for sure. So I think we can transition, unless there's any kind of burning questions right now about kind of the first 25 years of WESK, or Jeanne's role in kind of the creation and growth of WESK to what it is today. But I think let's move on, Jeanne, to talk about you. So,
I was born in 1962 in a small town. Not that far back.
We can start wherever you like. It's all about you. So I was just making sure I had my list of questions, because I wanted to make sure we touch on at least a few of these things. But then let's see where the conversation takes us, because that's the fun. So first off, so we know you're an author. We know you run a couple of big businesses. Tell us a little bit about your background. You know, if you want to start in 1962, that works. But tell us, you know, how you got to where you are today. Why do you do what you do?
Well, you know, it's interesting when just asking that question, is because I was just talking to someone the other day about when you're in business for yourself, every experience and every piece of education you've ever accumulated is useful, as opposed to you becoming an engineer, and so only things that are engineering related are useful as far as your vocation. But as an entrepreneur, it's a lot of little things that you learn as a teenager in your early 20s and then into your 30s. They accumulate to your skill set over time. And so I think everything you do matters. So I started out in journalism, and I fell in love, and I got married, and I moved to California. And then when I moved back to Canada, I was working in sales and marketing. And then in 1992, the business that I was working in as an outside salesperson amalgamated with another company. And I was the only woman rep. I was in the top 20 reps in Canada. I was making a very nice, healthy income. And the company that bought us, for every account that there was one of the buying companies reps in, and our reps in the buying company's reps got the account. And so I went from selling $800,000 to $80,000 pretty quickly. And I realized I need to go the writings on the wall. And so I was thinking about, if I'm going to build my own business, I might as well do it with something that I love doing. And for several years at that point, I'd been involved with business and professional women, and I had spoken at many conferences on mentoring and women's sales skills and lots of different things. I was thinking about, how do I transition this into that, which is kind of where I started my business in '92. My youngest sister went into business with me. She had been working as a ministerial assistant to an MLA, and she was pretty burnt out, and she was ready for something totally, absolutely different. And so we banded together and we started Martrain in '92. And so when I think about what happened at that point, is I was ready to really ready to leave this sales job. And the manager was trying to find a way to show me the door, and that was pretty clear. And I said to him, I said, why don't we just do this with dignity? Why don't you lay me off so I can go and pogie for 8 months while I build my business? And I will tell everyone else I am leaving without duress. And then we can have a nice little goodbye party. You don't look like the asshole you are. And then I can go with dignity as well. And we agreed to that, and thank God, because that really was a nice way to end that era of my career as I moved into the speaking and training business. So I started doing very much sales training and training around women in sales and gender issues when I started my business. And my partner was doing similar work, but she was doing other areas around codependency, which is her core educational background. And over time, I started seeing that interrelationshipness between gender issues and racial issues, which led me into doing issues around working with diversity and specifically racism. And so that's why I ended my speaking business, my training business was around generational differences, gender issues, and immigration and racial issues. So I basically ran that business doing speaking, opening and closing conference speakers often. I spoke several times for women entrepreneurs, it was kind of cool. And then kind of coming into this next era, I'm 58 this year. And so in my mind, I was going to be building this publishing company as I turned 60. And so about 6 or 7 years ago, I started publishing my husband's books. He's written about 9 or 10 books. And so I was helping him do that. And then I co-wrote a couple books with my sister that I started Martrain with. And from that, I had other people asking me, how do I do this? How do I do this? And the next thing I know, I'm doing courses on writing nonfiction books for business people. And so I was working with 4 or 5 authors, helping them bring their books to market. And then COVID hit. And COVID fast-tracked my business so that we're bringing out 10 books this year, none of which I've written or anyone I'm related to. And so this I don't know where my speaking and training business is going to be. It's for many people in my industry, it's pretty much on hold. Some of us are doing online work, which I'm doing a bit of as well. But this, when I talk about what did I do over my summer vacation, I published 5 books. And so in the sense of, I'm seeing that transition from Martrain into Wood Dragon books. And so I'm really excited about it. I'm excited about not being the person at the front of the room, but helping other people be at the front of the room metaphorically when it comes to their books and talking about their books and the exciting messages that many of them have to share with the world.
So this is probably I don't know. There's no such thing as dumb questions, but I'm just going to say it's probably a dumb question. But my first question is, what does it really mean to run a publishing company? What does that look like, in terms of kind of more the data? It's something that just kind of, I feel like publishing is something you hear about on TV. It's something that, people do in New York. And so how was that a decision that you made? How do you do it? And then I think another kind of interesting aspect to this is, what does it mean to be a publisher in rural Saskatchewan?
So there's what we call legacy publishers, like Penguin, and that's
Mhm.
over here. And then we have self-publishing over here. So we are an indie hybrid press. So what that means is sometimes we acquire books. So basically we take a book and we put it through the process for an author, and out the other end, they make royalties, we make royalties. But for most of the business books, we do hybrid. So where the author pays some money in towards production, mostly editing fees.
Okay.
And so coming out the other end, again, it's a split royalty between the author and the publishing company. So we take the idea from their head, and through usually 5, 6, 7 rounds of editing, we create a meaningful, marketable, readable book that is going to make a difference in the marketplace. We have 2 kinds of lines. We have nonfiction, which is business books, self-help books. We're just publishing a book now on infertility, one on mental health, one on FAS. So that's kind of the nonfiction side as well as business books. And then genre fiction. So we're publishing 6 young adult books, 2 that are kind of Game of Thrones meets The Hobbit, and another 3 or 4 that are based on girls hockey in Estevan.
Very cool.
And then this really crazy book called The Cartwright Men Marry, which is what would have happened if the Cartwright men of the Ponderosa fell in love, and what would have happened. So those genre books, which are romance, mystery, or young adult. And so it started with the author and is this book viable? And beating it to death until it is. And that's why all the rounds of editing have to happen, so that that book is as good as it can be before it goes to galley, which is when we create what the inside of the book looks like, and then we design the outside of the book. Then we upload the book on our global distribution system so that it can be bought in bookstores in the UK and in Australia and Barnes & Noble. And then we create the book as an ebook for Kobo and Nook. Then we create the book as a Kindle ebook. Then we create the book available for Amazon. Then we create the audiobook. And through that process, we create a book trailer and we do an online launch. And if we can, we do a physical launch. So the author makes money on the royalties, we make money on the royalties, and that's why it's so important that the book is really good and designed well and presented well, because then otherwise no one makes money. What's the point in that? So it's a new world for publishing because I have authors all across Canada. I have authors in Ontario and in BC. My vendors, I've got 2 ghostwriters working on 2 projects next year, which I can't tell you about because otherwise it wouldn't be a ghost. As far as designers, we have cover designers. My best cover designer's in the UK. He's the only guy on our team. And we have designers who do inside formatting. And I have designers in the Ukraine. I have designers in Canada, Vancouver Island, South Korea. Yeah, I used to live in Canada. So the ability to run a business online has been jacked up because of COVID. Because all of a sudden it's like, it's not an option. If you want to do business, you gotta play on the online world. And so what that meant for me is the ability to do book trailers and to do online launches and to work with all my authors via Zoom and all of these multiple platforms that make publishing possible in 2020 that simply did not exist even 7 years ago. So it's an exciting world, really.
Yeah, I think it's just really interesting to me, to kind of see your path and kind of both in terms of, I guess it's a somewhat natural progression, but at the same time, going from kind of speaking and training to, the whole publishing world, it does seem like a bit of a leap. So I guess my question is, how do you decide when it's the right leap to take?
Well, I think if I hadn't already written and published 12 books, I sure wouldn't have made that leap. And along with that, I really learned all of the, not all of them, obviously, but a lot about publishing and a lot about how you market books. And for example, there's a new bookstore in Regina called Penny University. And so why is it such a much better deal to sell my books through Penny University than Chapters? Well, the difference is the book rate. She doesn't charge me as much money as a publisher. So you know, it's about making deals with bookstores. It's about understanding what, when you sell a book, how you have to price it so that you don't end up owing the printing company money because you under budgeted or you under priced the book. There's so much science around it, and I hate to say math. I really hate the math. For example, the Cartwright book we're bringing out in hardcover, softcover, both regular print and large print, because of course the Ponderosa babes are all over 55, and so that's why we brought out. It's the only book we've done in large print. We're really excited about that. And so having to figure out the math behind the industry, managing the business. And so when we think about women entrepreneurs, several years into the cycle of women entrepreneurs, every like 5 or 10 years, we'd end up with bringing in a speaker that really talked about those 3 pieces of your business: managing your business, marketing your business, and making your product or service. And you can get so excited about doing the business.
Mm-hmm.
If you aren't marketing it enough, or if you're not getting out there and getting the sales or the product, or getting the deals, or at the back end, if you're managing it poorly and mispricing your product, or are not dealing with vendors that are dependable or cost efficient, you can be as successful as crazy and still go out of business. We know restaurants all the time that go out of business and we go, oh, it's always so busy there. I don't know why they went out of business. Because they weren't managing the marketing and the management end of the business. Mm-hmm. And so in the sense that whatever business you're in, you have to deal with all 3 of those balls of the air and constantly be tossing them, you know?
So if you were to say, you know, one kind of piece of advice for women entrepreneurs in order to succeed today, this is not a question I gave you in advance, you know, would that really be kind of what it boils down to for you?
I think if you do not have the skill set or the time, you need to beg, borrow, steal, or hire someone to do that for you. Mm-hmm. I used to say partner with someone to do that, but I'm very cautious about recommending people partner unless they're willing to do the work to make sure that partnership is safe and secure. And so if I don't have obviously I don't have the creative skill set to design covers for 5 different platforms. I need to hire someone to do that. I could figure it out, but would it be as good a product? Would it take me way too much time to do it? That's not where my skill set is. So it's really important to say, okay, what are all the jobs that need to be done in this business? And you probably don't even know what they are until you get into it. And then to figure out which ones are the ones that are in my strength, and which ones do I need to see if someone else can do, so that I can spend my energy doing what I need to do and still have that overall umbrella perspective of being able to, okay, am I managing the business right? Am I handling the money coming in and coming out right? Am I paying the bills on time so I'm not screwing up our credit rating? Mm-hmm. Am I marketing it right? Am I on the right platforms for marketing it? Should I be talking about this on Facebook, or should be on LinkedIn? Should I have a website? What should be our strategies? Should we have a bricks and mortar location? Should everything be online? All of these decisions need to be managed once you make that decision. And so it's really important to do a lot of thinking, and not to let your entrepreneurial passion, this explosion that you have in your head, which drives us for years and years and years, especially when you have tough years or tough clients to deal with, that passion that drives us as entrepreneurs. We need to just step back and say, okay, let's put our big girl boots on here and sit down and do some real hard thinking. And to talk to other women entrepreneurs, or not even women entrepreneurs, other entrepreneurs generally, and say, okay, so what do you think the things are I should think about? If this is my product or this is my service, what are the decisions that you think I need to make? Not what's the answer, but what are the questions that I need to ask myself? Yeah. Because starting a business is as much about what you are not going to do as what you are going to do. So what is the narrowing of your niche? As far as, so even with the publishing, it's like, we do not do literary books. Okay, first of all, they don't sell well. And we don't do poetry. And we don't do children's books. All of those are types of publication that are beyond my competency, and I am not willing to learn what I need to learn to do it. And so it's important to say, okay, and in your field is what are the areas of practice that we cover and what are the areas that we don't?
Exactly.
And the more specialized you are in today's world, in a lot of ways, that is what is going to really build your business quickly. The quicker you can get really clear on what are you doing and what aren't you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Who are your vendors? Who are your customers? Who aren't your vendors? Who aren't your customers? What's your geography? And because some people say, oh, I could sell now globally. Really? I don't want to be shipping books all over. There's only 3 places I ship books to. Otherwise, they need to buy through my distribution network. So be really clear on what you want to be doing and what little parcels do you want to be doing up in the middle of the night in your basement as you build your business. Because the more thinking you do at the front end, the less pain you'll have at the back end.
I think that's excellent advice. And I think, to me, it seems that you need to kind of not only ask those questions at the start, but kind of all along the way. And so, I think 2020 has been a great teacher for us all in terms of adapting to all sorts of quote unquote new normals. But as you said too, it's something that has kind of shifted your focus in terms of, what's happening, where the business is right now. So yeah, kind of that never stop questioning thing. I guess it's one of those, and I know for myself in my practice. So for those who don't know, I'm a lawyer, and I have a specialty. And so my specialty area is technology, which continues to grow and change. And it's part of so much of our life now. So, but, even the law that I practiced 5 years ago is not the law that I practice today, because these things keep changing. And of course, that's the fun of it. So, yeah. And I guess that's finding the balance.
Yeah, and so even what you just said there, Danielle, as far as here's your specialty, be very careful about, it's like someone says, well, can you just handle my divorce? Can you just handle this real estate deal? And then what happens is you start doing stuff you don't want to be doing because you start getting knowing for doing that. So it's really important to kind of figure out what is that box. And you could say, well, I'm not making enough money right now. I'm doing everything. Anything anyone wants to pay me to do, any book that someone wants to publish, come talk to me. No, you have to be really clear on that, because then with the online world, the reputation that you get is pretty quick. For example, on Facebook, we have Wood Dragon Books. We have a page. And then from that, every book that we put out or book series, we do a separate page for that. And then we tie it to the Wood Dragon Books. And so I have a pretty clear little box of the types of books I am never going to publish that are not in alignment with my value system, because everything is connected. And so it doesn't matter if that's going to be a bestseller. I would never do a 50 Shades of Grey. And so in the sense, it's really important to know where your values are. What kind of product would you not, if someone says, but can you do this? There's going to be good money in it. Or would you work with this person? Or would you hire this person? So that's why all this thinking about your values as you start will save you so much bad feelings with yourself and with other people as you go along. And like you said, it's something that you're constantly reevaluating and just asking yourself, okay, just a second here, let me do a values check. Is this something that's eating my guts if I do this work? Is it worth it? Because you know what, even if you say, oh, I'm going to charge them 3 times as much, at the end of the day, it still gets you. So it's important to know what you stand for and how you can communicate that, because the world is too connected now. You can't kind of confuse your brand. So you don't want to confuse your brand out there for a whole bunch of marketing reasons, but you don't want to confuse your internal brand either.
Sometimes one of the partners that I've worked with a long time here, he calls it the Know Thyself program. And so I always thought that was really helpful too, because it's, what are you willing, where are you willing to go? And what sits well with you, and finding, and, we all have to find the balance for ourselves between, wanting to do it all and wanting to do the best job of it. And, there needs to, there is unfortunately some limits on time and the ability to do everything. So it does make sense in terms of, preserving our self in general, preserving ourselves and our sanity, as well as, you know, being successful at what we're doing, that, you know, there does need to be some parameters around it. And we're the only ones who can be responsible for that.
And the clearer you are on this, then you understand where your extensions are. So I moved from Regina this year. We sold our house in Regina, built a house here in Mossbank, population 562 after we moved here. And so leaving Regina, I decided, okay, I'm going to just rethink everything I'm connected to from a volunteer perspective. I grew up in a volunteeraholic family where everyone volunteered in so many different ways. And so I was thinking about, okay, how do I connect what I'm passionate about now with Wood Dragon Books with the things that I have been excited about, helping girls and women be successful, helping youth. And so we're just launching in the next month an author competition, a young author competition. So if an author is between grade 7 and 12, and they live within this, basically, it's called the Palliser Library region, this library district, this school district.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to have a competition that over several months, that in the end, we're going to publish 3 books. So it won't cost that young person anything, but we're going to take their book to market. And so part of it is, if I'm really clear on what I'm trying to do with my business and what my marketing strategy is, and what is my juice for as a volunteer and contributing to the world in a bigger way, then those things come together really easily without a lot of thinking about it. It's like, well, that's totally logical, you know, and it feels logical in my heart, feels logical in my brain, makes sense in my business plan. So the clearer you are as to why are you doing what with your business, the more easy decisions are as you go forward. You don't have to think things to death, because it either makes sense or it doesn't make sense. It's black and white almost.
Sometimes. Sometimes. No, I think that's fair. So we're getting close to 6. So I saw one of the notes in the chat, but just wanted to flag that if people have questions for Jeanne, please do type them into that Q&A box. I want to make sure that we save some time for those. But in the meantime, I will keep asking questions because I have more.
I noticed just in the chat, people were looking about how to get a hold of me. Go to wooddragonbooks.com, and there's the little contact box in the corner with my phone number and email address. So just go to wooddragonbooks.com.
Perfect. So let's take a little bit of a sidestep and talk a little bit more about some of the topics on the training, speaking side. And the one I wanted to talk about in particular is something that, you know, I think is somewhat reflective of 2020 in a lot of ways, in terms of some of the focus on issues around diversity. And so just wanted to, I hope it's a heightened focus and a change in perspective, but just wanted to ask, I guess, how did you find yourself focusing on that topic? And then kind of what conversations do you think it's important for entrepreneurs in Saskatchewan to be having on the topic of diversity in 2020?
I think we are now in the time of what we will call the Great Reckoning. And I think we are now going through the time of Me Too. We're going through the time of Black Lives Matter, Indigenous Lives Matter. The time has come of reckoning of behavior as a culture over the last 200 years, and people who have not been treated well are tired of it. And whether it's women and sexual harassment, or it's comments and racial slurs that people have heard through their whole childhood and work life, there's a general feeling of we've had enough. And so I think that organizations need to, whether you're an organization of 3 or 3,000, I think now is the time to look at every policy you have around how you treat people, how you deal with your customers, your clients, your employees, and ask yourself, could we do better? I was just having a conversation this week with someone who was speaking on the same conference as me, and I was reading all the front material of the thing, and she used the term soul tribe. And I said, you know what, 5 years ago, no one would blink at that, and what's his name, Seth Godin, brought it into saying, but you know, the term tribe is not a term that anyone should be using unless you're using it in the true Indigenous or African term. And appropriation is really when something, a term or a behavior or a piece of clothing that when the group that it's originally from are mocked or silenced over it, and then when people of the dominant culture use it, it's cool. That's always wrong. And so we are moving to a new place of awakening. And I think as entrepreneurs, we have a duty to ourselves to make sure that we get ahead of this, so that we're not, short-footed as far as getting caught into something. During just the beginning of COVID, I was doing a lot of work with senior management teams around the Me Too movement, specifically about what happens if a claim comes up, and what you need to do. And primarily what you need to do is not overreact, and you need to have good policy, and you need to follow your policy. And in the time of this reckoning, there will be a lot of people overreacting. And it's really important to have good policies in place around human rights, around gender rights, around anything that you think might down the road be conflict. And make sure your people are informed, make sure your people are trained. And because these issues are not going to be something that are going away. They're going to accelerate in meaning in the workplace and meaning in our society. And as leaders, we have a responsibility to our teams, but as leaders, we have just a responsibility to ourselves to safeguard our organizations. And to do that, it's about having good policy and following it, and looking forward and looking ahead of the game.
You've written a number of books on these topics. So if I was looking to buy one of those books, which website do I look at?
Well, you can't really buy them off Wood Dragon. Most
Okay.
of them are available on Amazon. If you're in Regina, several of my books are available at Penny University, which is a brand new bookstore that opened up last week. And I'm just so excited to have an independent bookstore opening up during COVID. I go, whoa, she's so ballsy. So good job, Annabelle Townsend, for doing that.
Awesome. Okay, so feel free to add some questions, folks. So I'm going to kind of switch it back to kind of maybe a more reflective question. So I did ask you this one earlier. I feel like we've kind of talked about some of these topics along the way, but Jeanne, if you were going to give advice to a younger version of yourself, what would you say? What are your learnings that you think that earlier you could have benefited from?
Organize yourself. I'm not an organized person. I'm a right brain, lateral thinking person. And if you're kind of like me, if I was giving advice to myself, knowing who I am now, I would have set better systems in place. It would have saved me money, stress, time, because I'm still way too many sticky notes and not enough notebooks. And so really understand what your weakness is, and try to mitigate that and learn some skills, because I can't hire someone to come and organize my brain. I have to do that myself. I have to find systems and ways so that I don't lose track of things. Mm-hmm. Because right now I have 15 books in the works, 4 in audiobook production right now. That one that just came out, Fully Half Committed, which is a book on marriage counseling. And we've got 2 or 3 in that process. We've got 5 in proof level. And that's a lot to go around in my 8-year-old brain. And so I need to write more things down and take care of details better. And that's never been my strength. And I know looking back over my careers, I would have saved myself a lot of grief if I'd been a little more organized and are more organized. Going forward, it's still a current problem.
I think that's such a tough one, right? It's, everyone, or I don't know, I guess speaking for myself only, you want to talk about, you want to think about, here are the things I'm good at. I want to focus on that. But, recognizing truly, but it's okay. I'm not good at everything. I know that I'm not. It's okay that I'm not. But, recognizing what I am, in fact, not good at so that I can get help. Do you have any kind of tips or tricks around, how to recognize in yourself those areas that you could improve?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of really good things out there. For me, it's just getting really clear on whether you're in kangaroo or a ladder, you know, very sequential. You do this, this, and this like ladders do. Or you're a kangaroo where you jump around and eventually it all comes together. I work with authors who are kangaroos and ladders, so I need to always go where their brain is working. You know, even just Myers-Briggs, do a Myers-Briggs assessment. Get really clear on where your strengths and weaknesses are. And don't beat yourself up. Because whatever you're good at, you think everyone's good at, and whatever you're not good at, you think no one else is good at. And so, you know, I was working with this gal who was doing a lot of my bookkeeping and database, and she was doing this thing with Excel spreadsheet. I go, oh, that's brilliant. And she says, oh, idiot could have figured this out. And I'm going, I guess that's me. Because for her, she saw that it was very simplistic, very logical. You know, it's just like, how can you not get this? And the flip side is my husband's a very analytical person, and he's had multiple careers. And so he's more of that ladder thinking. So when he needs to put together a marketing piece or something like that, something that I can literally do in my sleep, he goes, oh yeah, that's pretty good. And I go, and I'm tempted to say, any idiot could have figured this out. But then that doesn't build good marriages, does it? No.
Well, but apparently, you know, we've got a book about that as well, if if there's some other subjects to look at. A quick question that came in through the chat about books is from Ryan on Facebook Live. Do you have a book on how to create policy?
No.
Not yet?
No, because really policy is very legally related. So it's important that you first of all look at what is the federal and provincial laws that rule that. And so, you know, for example, with sexual harassment, one of the worst things that our governments ever did was putting bullying under sexual harassment, calling it personal harassment, because bullying and harassment are totally two different things. Harassers and bullies have totally two different agendas, and that's why you have victims and you have targets. A bully has a target and a harasser has a victim. And my experience, for a while I did investigation for the Human Rights Commission. And it's been my experience over years of doing sexual harassment and harassment training. A lot of people who are harassers are clueless. They think they're funny. They think that other person's interested in them, especially if it's sexual harassment, or they think no one has an issue with it. And when it's brought to their attention, often they stop what they're doing that is being offensive or inappropriate. Where bullies never do that. You're just giving them ammunition to treat you more poorly going forward. So it's really important that when it comes to policy, you start with whatever the legal foundations are, and then build your policy going up from that, depending what the issues are that are prominent in your organization.
Okay, thanks, Jeannie. So we are just at time. So I don't know where that hour went. I feel like we could have chatted for a lot longer. I would love to pick your brain on a few more things, but we'll have to save that for offline. But just wanted to say thanks so much, Jeannie, for being with Uncorked today, for your wisdom and insights. I think there's a lot of positive feedback in the chat, and so definitely a lot of messages that people really appreciated hearing. For everybody who participated today, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for your time. And we do hope that you will join us on October 20th for our next Uncorked. And looking forward to raising a glass of wine. I will have wine next time. So I look forward to seeing you all then. So
I'll have this last tip for you, Danielle.
Thank you so much.
But I would like to say, if anyone has any further questions, just email me. Just go on wooddragonbooks.com. There's my email address there. Drop me an email and we can chat on anything that didn't go far enough in this conversation.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, well, I think that's all for tonight. Thanks, everyone.